Hello, and welcome to The Future is Spoken, produced by the Digital Assistant Academy. This show accompanies the Digital Assistant Academy's course entitled Voice Interaction Design. In today's episode of Designing Omnichannel Conversations, Shyamala Prayaga speaks with Celene Osiecka about omnichannel conversations in IVR, interactive voice response world, and how automation is helping many companies. Celene and Shyamala also speak about testing the bots and some challenges designing conversations for the IVR. Celene is a conversational designer. She has been designing conversational interfaces using emerging technologies like chatbots, AI, natural language, speech recognition, and machine learning for the last 15 years, deploying over 500 conversational interface deployments in the financial, telecommunications, travel, retail, and education industries. With a background in psychology and HCI, she currently leads a global team of conversational designers that seeks to design innovative and groundbreaking conversational interfaces. Starting with their own experiences, they end up discussing the importance of testing and the need to make the assistants as human as possible.
Welcome, Celene.
Hi, nice to be here.
Same here. It's a pleasure having you in our show. So, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Yeah, it's a good Friday here. Hopefully, it's going to be even better weekend, but it's Good Friday.
Yeah. So, Celene, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a conversation designer that has started conversation designing since 2005 on chatbots before chatbots were chatbots. And I worked a lot in the digital space, designing FAQ bots and transactional bots, and then have moved to also designing voice bots for IVRs and some of the other voice assistant platforms, and currently manage a team of conversation designers where we build these bots for enterprise companies, for banks and for utilities and for telcos to help consumers get things done. So that's what I do today.
That's amazing. So how did you get into this space?
Yeah, it was interesting. So again, back in when chatbots weren't a thing, we built these things, but they didn't have a name. They were calling them, I don't know, what do they call them? Virtual agents, virtual assistants, chatbots, no one really knew what they were. So we were building these things back in, again, like 2005, and I came into it more, I was doing the conversation design of these chatbots, but I was also doing all the project management, all the support, all the optimization, even building the models and doing even technical integration. So I came into it doing all things. There was no specialty at that point because this wasn't a thing and it wasn't no separation like that. So I started doing everything. And then as the company grew and the needs for these things grew and we scaled, I started to specialize. Instead of, looking at everything, instead of doing all those pieces, we really started to specialize on the design aspect, and our team started to focus there, and the optimization aspect, we started to focus there. So our team now really focuses on the design and optimization of these bots, and then we have kind of other teams helping us with those other things, but started off, really widespread and just really focused as we started to really understand and get our footing of what these things are. I don't think back then we understood it, and now we're starting to really understand what these things are, what they can do for us, what users are expecting from them, and it's really growing that industry. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So you mentioned quite a few things here. You mentioned chatbots, you mentioned voice bots, and also IVR. With your experience working in the industry for such a long time, what have you seen as the key differences or commonalities designing for each of these different platforms?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I came in, again, designing for digital. In digital, you have a lot of things to support you through the process, right? You have a lot of visual cues and you have a lot of, I can dump a whole bunch of text on you, and although it's not great experience, you could read the whole text, all the disclaimers, all the legalese, all that stuff. So in designing for a digital world, I could design a generally great experience, even including all that stuff. If a customer came to us and said, we need you to say this whole thing, we can do that. And then we started to get into the digital world, and we started, chatbots have a smaller real estate. Okay, now we have how to present this information better into a conversation, back and forth conversation. We started to develop cards. So these cards are these little pop-out things that lay over additional content if we need them, images and more text. So even that, I could still, even smaller real estate in the mobile kind of viewpoint. If you're thinking of like Apple Business Chat and Google Messaging, that still makes sense. I can do it still well in those channels. And then when I started to get more in the voice space in the last couple of years, I definitely feel handicapped. There's a whole principle with voice is they just have a lot, in digital aside, you can have digital integrated, but let's just say just voice plain. You just have a lot of things you're missing there that I was used to in digital. So you don't have the showing a picture. If you want to just say, yep, is this let's say I was a telco, is this your remote? And they say, yep, that's my remote, because I see the picture and I recognize it. Voice, you have no concept of that. You'd have to describe, turn over your remote and see if this is the right model number. It's just extra steps, extra long flows, walking people through things, people dropping off because it's just too much cognitive load. It's just designing for the voice is just a whole new thing. And then if you have to complicate things where people are usually driving and people are busy and have their kids in the background and all that stuff, there's just all this noise level and just distraction levels that you just don't have in digital. When you're on a bot, usually you're at a computer or on your phone, pretty much paying attention to that. Yeah, it's just a whole new realm of challenges that I had to be introduced to and figure out, okay, this is what I need to design for first. If you can design for voice first, the digital becomes easy. You can start layering on digital when it makes sense, if you have that ability. But yeah, with just voice alone, it was challenging. But I have seen other sides where the designers have come from the voice world, have been designing IVRs for a long time. First, they design for those, and then they get into digital, and it's a whole new world. They have so many more features that they can use that they haven't had in the past. So it's almost overwhelming to them in a different way. Right now, they have all this ability and not quite sure how to use it. So it's interesting to see both worlds and how people have come, because usually it's one or the other. You come from the digital world or the voice world. Rarely, we're not old. The industry's not old enough where you can come from both worlds right now. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love what you said about if you think about voice first, automatically like any other modality or falls in place because you've designed for the most complex like interface or modality first, which is really nice. Do you think there will be mixed modalities? We keep talking about these things as well, right? When Amazon was launched in the beginning, the whole reason they were promoting it was hands-free experience and like eyes-free experience, completely voice. But then just like 2 or 3 years in the line, they launched the Echo Show because they soon realized, although the hands-free and eyes-free makes sense, but it's not inclusive, or maybe we need additional modality to reduce the cognitive load. So what do you think like is the future of a voice design? Is this a mixed modality or like only voice or I don't know. But
I think it's going to have to be. So even in the IVR world, we're starting to notice, let's say a booking journey, for example, if I want to book like a car or an airline, doing that in IVR right now, so many steps, so many things. So usually what we'll try to do is if the user is calling in on their mobile device, we will send a link to pop out like a virtual visual card to them that the IVR will walk them through on their phone, for example. So even in IVR, which is an old technology, if you think of it, we're still introducing these new technologies because we just know it's easier. We're going to see way less steps, way less confusion, but it's cool because the IVR bot is still around to help them. If they have a question on one of the forms or one of the fields, they can ask to say, what's this mean? Where do I get it? Where like on the IVR, it's very hard to go back and forth. You start here and then how do we go back to filling out the form? And we're seeing work really well in a lot of use cases. Yes, so I do see that although we could stay with just voice, and sometimes you're gonna need to, right? There's certain use cases where you don't have the ability to see these things. So I think we're always gonna have to design for that. The more opportunities we can add in these multimodal things when a user can use their eyes or other gestures, maybe even I'm going to want to take advantage of those as much as possible. But yeah, I don't know if we can completely get rid of voice only, because I feel like there's still going to be always use cases that have a need for that. Even if you talk about accessibility and things like that, there's still having voice only is still going to be not going to go entirely away. But yeah, we can definitely augment it.
definitely, yeah. I feel like it should be complementing kind of experience where depending on the use case, maybe users can go through multimodality, where the multimodality could occur because of the complex situation like you mentioned. Like if there are too many things you have to play back to the user, it's too much cognitive load to even remember. So there's screen complementing, or maybe the context. You are in a place where you don't want the voice assistant to read back to you your bank information or your account information, and you want some sort of like privacy in there. So
Exactly.
that's amazing. So now talking about IVR is the primary modality of IVR is voice, right? You are talking through voice and getting responses through voice. Do you feel like IVRs deprive people who are differently abled to use them because of that, or are they enablers for people who have like any kind of hearing impairment or speaking impairments to use these kind of assistants?
Yeah, that's why I'm not deploying one solution for clients, because we really love to let the users make the choice of how they engage with these things. Yeah, so definitely disabilities is definitely one of them where there's challenges with that. But sometimes, like you said, you're just even not, right? You're in bed with your laying in bed with your husband at night. I don't want something to talk to me and let me type. And vice versa, if you're in a car, I don't want to type to you, let me talk. So I think, yeah, it becomes, and that goes true, yeah, again, disabilities, just the situational aspects. There's a whole bunch of reasons why we shouldn't design one way for everybody, because not everybody, we can't force people into a mold that they don't either want to be in or can't be in, depending on what their situation is. Yeah, so I always like to give the users choice, and that's why you can have the same journey across these channels. So if you wanted to engage on the digital side, we're going to allow for that. If you wanted to engage in, Google, we can do for that. If you want to engage on the phone or an assistant, I can do that. And there might be variations of how the journey is presented in these, but generally you're giving the user that choice that if they want to do that for whatever reason, they are allowed. And I'm not going to push you into a channel because I think it's the right channel for you, because we don't know as designers. Everybody has different reasons why they would want to use a different channel.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I feel like this is a good alternative to just forcing one modality to the users, like having mixed modalities and like having them choose which one they want, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about conversational interfaces, you've been in this space for a long time. What do you think, which industries are picking it up more? Where is the opportunity? And where do you think there's more potential?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So COVID changed like everything. It was on a trend. I could say back before March, there was one trend going, right, of all the industries. Now COVID, I totally flipped all the industries around. So because now we're seeing the like retail doing fine. Like they're doing just fine. They have tons of business, but they can't handle all the business with what they're doing with their agents. So they need bots to handle that business for one reason, because they just have increased business overall. But then you have the telcos, no, not telcos, sorry, the airlines, and a lot of the hotel groups, airlines, very impacted, devastatingly. So they're in a different position. Though they're not getting the volume that they have a lot of impact to their employees. You have a lot of furloughs and things like that we've been hearing. To handle the existing volume that they even still have, they need automation to handle that. So all industries are now really jumping after this automation because they have to, and for different reasons. Some of them have been pretty steady. I haven't seen a lot of change as much in the banks, like the finance. I haven't seen as much change in the telcos. Like car rentals and things were hit a little bit, but not as much. But yeah, generally the two ends of it that's the two industries that are seeing a lot because of COVID, mostly.
That's interesting. So how about like you brought up customer care, and I feel like, yeah, definitely there's a lot of operational like optimization which could be done through voice, for sure. Even in general scenarios also, I feel wherever there is a customer interaction or customer care kind of interaction, definitely feel like we can use voice. How about other industries? For example, now COVID, people don't want a don't want a touch experience. So they want a touch-free kind of experience, even when they go to like restaurants or drive-throughs and other places as well. So I know McDonald's was already doing something along these lines where they've launched a drive-through which is voice enabled. Do you think things will become more like frontline going forward?
Definitely. Yeah. It's like I know the designer that helped with the McDonald's side. And it's, yeah, just really cool, the thought process that they had to go through to think through that. And it seems simple, but it's not, right? But yeah, that is definitely helping, I think. But yeah, there's a lot of application for this. I mean, for entertainment purposes, we're just talking about how marketing companies could really start leveraging voice technology to make a lot of campaigns that are really interesting. We just talked about tourism companies could make games on the voice application where you listen to the landscape and you guess where it is. Just fun things like that, because people are looking for that gamification to really drive people to these channels, and then for entertainment, but also just for brand awareness and things like that. And I'm starting to see more things like gamification and like rewards programs and things like that. And it's interesting. And just, even though that was launched for entertainment purposes, bots are helping with that, right? Helping people launch these games and help people understand how these games work. Like Starbucks just launched a gamification for their rewards app. And it's just, yeah, lots of questions around that of how do I win this game and things like that. It's just interesting. Yeah, so it's a lot of it I see as entertainment. A lot of it is I see, like you said, yeah, the COVID, low touch points. And that's why we might be seeing a lot of the increases in volumes too, is that, yeah, a lot of people just on retail, I know Amazon doing great. And I'm part of that trend that you're seeing is I order all of my stuff on Amazon, and it's just, yeah, convenience, and also, yeah, low touch. It's just an easy way to get things. So definitely see, yeah, there's more and more automation is becoming, yeah, standard as part of, like you said, customer care, entertainment, and security. People tend to feel more secure that way for various reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good insight for sure. I do feel that as much these voice assistants are growing this opportunity, the utility is not the same. So for example, personally seen that people use these voice assistants for a specific 5 or 6 tasks, like talking to so many people. I've realized like their use cases are very limited. Sometimes it could be because of discoverability issues that I don't know that more features exist, or sometimes it could be because I don't feel the need of those. Although there are a lot of these opportunities out there, how can we design a solution which can enable people to use more and more of these kind of applications or use cases?
Yeah, so you mean like use cases within an app itself. So you're seeing like a low number of like intents or journeys within based on what people are
Right.
asking. Yeah. Yeah, I see that too. And I've seen that as a trend for a long time, where we think that these things to be successful, we need to build in thousands of intents. And a lot of, clients even today ask me, we have all these intents, I want to put it all in there. And in all of our analysis we've ever seen, it's not usually needed. Usually, like you said, there are top trends that people ask, and it's the 80-20 rule. I can build, and I don't know, the top, depends on the industry, but let's just say the top 100 intents, I can give you 80% of the traffic, and then 20% is the long tail. So then the question becomes, how much of that 20% you build in for the people that are, the few people that are asking it, do you still build that in for the complete experience or not? And eventually you can build it over time if you have the efficiencies and it makes sense. But really starting with that 80% is what I always recommend starting with. And then what I like to do is I look at the data coming in. So I always allow, the design methodology is you always let your user say what you want, even if we can't handle it. So if you want to, whatever, order an ice cream cone from whatever, I may not be able to do it right now, but if I see that you want to do that and I see a trend of people wanting to order ice cream cones from their bank, let's say, I would position it to the bank saying, we probably need an application to order ice cream cones. I build the intents based on the data coming in, because I don't want to ever build an intent that I don't see as a trend. Yeah, so if we're seeing the need for that, I want to allow people to feel open to ask whatever you need, I will get you the right answer. So maybe the right answer is giving you the answer or helping you with that transaction. Maybe the right answer is, I'm going to get you to someone that can help. And then at that point, we might give an agent or give somebody some support or something like that. Federate a Google search or something, depending on what it is. But I would give opportunity for that user to still express what they want and try to give them the best solution now. But then I would then take that information and build in those journeys as I see them. So that way you're not building stuff that's not being used. And also you're not letting the user feel like there's 10 things I can do and that's it. You don't want to ever make them pick from a list, for example. So yeah, it's the freedom plus the data. It goes back to that optimization and data analysis. You always have to have that loop, and then you can really design for what users want, and then they feel capable of doing them.
That's interesting. So you're saying instead of focusing on all the different things which the user can do, focus on the top, like the 80% things which are really required use case. I love that. I feel like, yeah, sometimes we go overboard trying to design the moonshot experience, that we miss on those basic interactions or like the basic things which the users would use or not. The data driven design, that design first and then go back and then look through which ones are being used and why the others are not, and come back. So I really feel that would be super helpful for the users. So you've designed bots and IVRs and all sorts of things for different industries like banking and for retail and different chatbots and all. Do you see, apart from the regulatory kind of things, are there any kind of like similarities in there when it comes to designing the bot?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, similarities. And I'm more talking about the differences between industries, but yeah, the similarities are, yeah, the trends in the users, I see those common, right? If you're coming into 10 years ago versus now, you're just seeing users expecting things. They expect personalization, and they expect real-time responses and knowing me, knowing my history. All that stuff is now present in all of the industries other than it was before. And then I guess the general process of building these things isn't the same, or is the same rather. It's the whole design loop that I said: get the data, design, iterate, design again, iterate. That process works for all industries. And it's funny, a lot of the industries I talk to think that might be different for them. We have this special thing, or we have this special thing. And sometimes it's true. They do have some special things that we have to look at, like integrations and third parties and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, generally though, yeah, the stories I hear are the same. The problems I hear are the same. Usually I don't hear from another client something as, oh, that's random and different. I've never heard that before. So yeah, I do see a lot of commonalities between them. But yeah, there are differences. Like one of them I talk about sometimes is the personality piece, and how you wouldn't design necessarily a really fun, loving, goofy personality for a bank. People just don't like it when you are funny with them when they're dealing with money. They just want, give me my answer. This is my money. When you're dealing with retail or something like that, you can have more fun. So there are differences across them, but definitely, yeah, the process of building these things and the user mentality when they're interacting with these things are, I say, generally the same.
And how about testing? So when you are testing these interactions, is there any differences, or you follow the same process, or because you are designing for a banking, there's a different level of testing methods which is required, or how does that go?
Yeah, it depends on, it's funny. When we're dealing with high, like defense contractors or things like that, I think they're more, even like financial companies, they're more tight on the process, right? You really want to check to make sure, is everything perfect, everything good, every piece of content good, is every utterance working the way it should? So sometimes that process of testing is more rigorous before we launch something. And then it's a process to convince them to say, I know it's not going to work perfectly. The NL is not going to be perfect. It's going to get things wrong. It's going to not maybe provide the right answers up front. But as long as all the bugs are worked out, let's get it live. Let's just get it live so we can get data going. So I do see that the hesitancy to go live, because they want to just test and tune and test and tune and test and tune before you go live. And it doesn't, again, from a bot perspective, you're wasting your money that way. You're not getting real data, and you're perfecting it based on what we think is best, but it's not what the user may think is best. So I do recommend trying to get it live as soon as possible. So sometimes, the testing cycles can be elongated because of that hesitancy. But generally, the process is the same, I would say, across all the verticals.
When you do the voice interactions or any kind of conversational designs, how often do you test it?
Yeah, so it depends on how we're building it. So with more self-serve platforms being developed, it's like we're currently launching our self-serve platform that builds all of the digital bots in November, and the transaction bots too. We've been building FAQ bots self-serve, and now we're doing transaction bots self-serve too. So with the more self-serve capabilities, testing becomes less of an issue because there's less development, less room for human error. Everything is being auto generated in the back end. So testing is so important to make sure generally the shell is working, it's coming up, presenting the right welcome message, it's transferring when it should be, the escalation messages or the office hours, all that stuff. So I think there is some testing that still has to be done in a self-serve world, but not as intensive. So I would usually test, it's just the one just before you launch something to production. So if you launch the first thing, I would test once. If you're making a whole batch of changes to content on a flow, I would test again, just whenever you push something. But for a non-self-serve world, if you're developing, even in an agile way, I do think that you're testing every sprint, everything, and you're testing much more regularly because there's a lot more bugs, lots more chances of error when you don't have a self-serve platform that's developing these things for you. So that, although the process of testing every time you go for a production is the same, it's much more testing, much more QA, much more UAT time built into those.
Yeah, definitely. Testing, I feel like testing is required very early and often, for sure, like you mentioned, depending on the use case and what you're designing for.
Yeah, and the way that the self-serve apps we're trying to push more is you have a prototyper right in the app. So if I would build in like a flow and I would build in a little node, I could go right to the side and test it. And I can type in my question and see if it comes back, right? Or you could talk to it and see if it comes back. So that's, I guess it's a form of testing, but it's really just, your real-time prototyping. That's, I feel like, the best way to design. So you can actually see, how is this rendering on this channel again? And how does it sound? And all that stuff you have to do real time. So if that's considered testing a bit, that you're doing all the time, but you can't really do it when you don't have self-serve. So the self-serve is just, it opens the doors for conversation designers to really make these great things instead of having all these conversations with developers saying, can we do this? Can we do this? How would it work? How would it, none of that has to exist anymore. But so that's real powerful. I feel like, again, handicapped the other way a bit because a lot of it you can't see it for real. You're just imagining how it's going to work. Yeah.
Do you feel like there are different methods like wizard of Oz testing or corridor usability testing, which you would often hear people throwing these jargons as well? Have you ever used these in your company to test early on, like some interactions and fix those?
Yeah. Sometimes you have to, like we're in a process now where we're talking about asynchronous, just how asynchronous works on an unauthenticated web experience. So asynchronous is the SMS email type conversations, but in a chat. So think of it like that, where if you had an asynchronous, unauthenticated experience and you have to describe how this would happen, would you want you to be notified that a message is waiting for you 2 hours later, or would you want to come back and check if the message is waiting for you 2 hours later? All these things, you have to lay it out for a user of how it would work, because you're in the process of designing the product that's going to build this thing. So there's always going to be use cases for Wizard of Oz because I can't prototype everything. So there's always going to be cases where you have to go to users and explain and demonstrate how it might work. But the better way to do is prototyping, where you can show them like, here's how it works. How do you think about it before you go to live? We always do a process, what we call just focus group testing before we go live. And it helps with usability improvements, but also it helps tune the model too. I'll always do that. Even if it's self-serve, 100% built for me, everything's working as expected, I still will do focus group testing every time before I launch, because it is, you just want that user. You don't know exactly what the user is going to type, and you don't know exactly how the user is going to act. So it's always a step. I should have mentioned that before too, but always a step we do. I recommend if we have the time. Sometimes we don't have the time, we have to skip it, but most of the time we do.
So you mentioned tuning. So tuning of the voice prompts or tuning the entire conversation?
When I said tuning, like in focus group testing, you mean? It's both. So if usually it's like the utterances and the model. If we see issues with the model not matching the right things, or we need to match more, maybe, but sometimes it is creating a new intent. We just see, a whole bunch of people are asking this and we didn't even think about that. We should ask, let's add that in. Or sometimes it's, we see them and they get stuck in a flow. Sometimes we allow that open feedback where if they just say they're stuck, we'll see that they're stuck, and we'll definitely look at that from a flow perspective. So it's all things. It's really meant for a lot of the model tuning, but it's open to, we see other issues as part of the process too.
Got it. Okay. That's interesting to know. And I feel this is an interesting approach to how you test your interactions or you tune your interactions. One thing which comes with conversational design is natural language. We talk about it all the time, and I feel most of the assistants are still not there, although
Mhm.
there's some effort going on to make things natural language. How do you ensure that you are covering as many possible utterances as possible or ways the user can say something?
Yeah, it's funny because all the bots I mentioned before, I've always dealt in natural language. I've never dealt in like directed dialogue or anything like that. So NL to me is like second nature. So when I see these other apps that are like just in IVR, it's like just DTMF where you're like button pushing or say this or that, that's weird to me because it's always been natural language. And I can't, yeah, the fact that we're still, like you said, a lot of the companies aren't there yet. It must be frustrating for users and probably still why they're not really fully confident of the technology. But yeah, so yeah, we see it all the time where if you're in an IVR and you don't let the user say something first and you just go right into it, say, you can say this, you can say this. It's immediate abandonment rights. 000, get me out of this. I don't think the IVR is much more if you always make the NL prompt at the beginning where you're saying, what do you want? What can I help you with? What can I help you with today? All that stuff, you see much better engagement rates. Yeah, so always recommend NL at the beginning. And sorry, I lost your question. You were talking about NL. I'm sorry, what was your question again?
Yeah. So my question was like, how do you ensure that
The utterances. Yeah, it's a challenge, right? And that's why I always try to push launch early because first of all, a lot of the templates we've templatized. So we know the standards. We know how people ask it because we can aggregate across industries. So that's one thing. So the templates will help and the kind of day zero models help. But there's always going to be, custom in those verticals and new verticals we've never thought of before. So that's where it goes into, we build as conversation designers. Again, we can build in self-serve tools, you can build them mostly ourselves. If not, the data scientists can help. But yeah, generally having data coming in, great. If you can give me a list, if you have an existing IVR, an existing chatbot, I will take that and I will feed it through data models and we'll get the utterances that way. It may not be exactly identical, but the closer to the channel, the better. Right? Even agent transcripts, that's great. So data is one thing. If we can get the data coming in, we'll build it from that. If we can't, if we have no data, then we're going to have to use our business expertise as much as possible to build in the utterances we think we need. And then that's when the focus group comes in helpful. Maybe for that case, you might do 2 focus groups, right? One, we would tune the model, do one more, and then we would launch. So that's a strategy so clients don't feel they're going out with a model that's not going to handle very much. But really the best way is the sooner you can go live in a bot that's handling most things. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be most things. The sooner you can go live, the more real life utterances you'll capture, and then you can feed that data right into it. And then data from lots of sources. You can have data right from the chatbot. You can have data feeding in from agents. Like what we're doing now is like when the question gets escalated to an agent and the agent might assign it the right intent, that goes right back into the model. So a lot of that tuning and optimization is happening at our conversation design level, and agents are helping too. But really that's where you tune it and you really get it to the point where it works well, but you don't want to set it out with a 20% accuracy rate. You have to get it up more, but there's that balance of how much. You don't want to make it perfect either. You don't want to wait till you get 90% accuracy because you're just going to be spinning your wheels without that real data. Yeah, it's that balance between of like how soon can you launch without waiting too long so they don't see ROI on what you're building.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. Yeah, definitely. I feel it's data helps get some of those natural utterances, and some of those is the best bet. We've done a lot of natural language studies personally, like to collect the different ways the user would say something, but then it goes into too much effort of sending out surveys, collecting the utterances, and the biggest challenge what I have seen trying to do something like that is these voice assistants have taught users how to speak. So nowadays, like people are not really natural because now they expect this is how the assistant would understand. So maybe I have to speak in this lingo. And that is what happens. So I feel just learning the natural way they speak and then making it may not be perfect the first time, but then eventually we are getting to that point of improvement. So
It's so true. Yeah. We see it. Either they talk like search engines, like Google, or they give you their life story because they think you're a person that we've seen on the digital side. And the bot can't handle really either one that way. So yeah, so the key is I don't want to force people into a way of talking. I want them to talk naturally, but yeah, I feel like the way that they're talking isn't quite natural. And plus the technology is not quite there to really understand you 100% like a person. So I want you to speak naturally, just knowing it's a bot. If you can do that, like we tend to build, if you build that mental model in saying, I'm a bot, I'm here to help, but I'm smart in some way to say that, then they talk to it, they give you all of the information you need, but don't make it unintelligible for a bot to understand, but it's that balance. So it's really, that welcome message is so important for a bot because it tells them what the range is, like what you can do, what you can't do, how smart the bot is, what happens if it doesn't match, what happens at that point. So there's all these considerations you have to think about in that initial welcome message to give them that expectation. But it is also, how the rest of the industry is going because they're copying how the rest of the bots interact. But yeah, as you were mentioning, I was thinking like I know because in your industry with the cars, I know I just sit in my car. My car's an old car, so it's not the brand that yours, but it's sit there and I'm like, okay, what do I say that it's going to understand? And I'm sitting there thinking, 10, maybe even 10 seconds. And then it times out and then it beeps me because I delayed too long thinking about how to talk to it. So yeah, it's very frustrating, especially when you're in situations where as you're driving, I can't cognitively think about that.
Right. Definitely. It happened with me so many times. Like when I got into my car, which is not the Ford car, and it's very command based. It's not very natural. So it expects still the navigation, destination, entry approach where you have to say step-by-step process. It's an old 5 or 6 years old car. So when I got and I was like, call my husband's name, it would not pick that. And it would execute in a certain format. So I was so frustrated. I tried a couple of times. I gave up. I'm not doing that anymore. So I definitely see that like it happens. I feel like it's up to the designers, like how they enable users by making it more natural and using the approach.
Yeah.
So it has been an interesting conversation. I loved every bit of what you said. So where can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, I have. So my company I work for is 27.ai. We're doing some really cool stuff there and some new innovative stuff again around self-serve and around the bot supervision and augmentation around agents and cool stuff like that. So it's all on our website at 247.ai. So go there. And then for me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. So if you want to take a look at my LinkedIn profile, it's just my first name, got my last name, I think is the address. But yeah, I'm here if you guys have any questions or just want to reach out and connect. I love to connect to other people in the industry too, just to find out what you guys are doing and talk shop and just so I can learn that side of things too. So yeah, but it's been great. Yeah, thanks for the chat.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thanks for listening today. If you would like to post a voice comment, please go to www.witlingo.com/DAA. That's www.witlingo.com/DAA. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, you can find all the information on how to become a verified voice interaction designer along with show notes and more at our website, digitalassistant.academy. That's digitalassistant.academy. We encourage your feedback and questions, so be sure to get in touch by using the contact page at the Digital Assistant Academy's website. We'll include the link in the show notes. In our next episode, Jeff Blankenberg from Amazon talks about how to build the future of voice. Until next week, take care.